Hello, sleepy soul. Before we start, I want to hear from you. So don't forget to mention your name, country, and time that you are watching this video at. I would love to read all the comments. Let's start. Am I the a-hole for making my roommate clean up after their mess, even though they said it was just temporary? I, 27F, recently moved in with a new roommate, Kelly, 26F, who I initially thought would be a great fit. We both needed a change and agreed to split a two-bedroom apartment in a bustling part of the city. The lease was clear, and we even had a roommate agreement that covered everything from bill splitting to cleaning schedules. In the beginning, things were smooth and we got along well. However, after a few months, Kelly's casual attitude toward cleanliness started to become a major issue. I work from home and enjoy a tidy space to keep my focus and sanity intact. I take pride in maintaining the apartment, doing the dishes immediately, vacuuming regularly, and even organizing a shared calendar for household chores. Kelly, on the other hand, seemed to have a laissez-faire approach. "I'm just waiting for the weekend to clean up," she'd say when I asked her to tidy up. At first, I tried to be patient. I assumed that everyone has different standards, and I even helped her out a few times when the mess got out of hand. But it became clear that her temporary excuses were becoming permanent habits. Dishes piled up in the sink, laundry was left scattered, and even the common areas started to look like a disaster zone. I tried discussing the issue with her calmly. "Kelly, I know you're busy, but we both live here. Can we please stick to the cleaning schedule?" I asked. She shrugged, saying, "I'll get to it soon, don't worry so much." My frustration grew as I ended up doing most of the work. I began to feel that my requests were being taken for granted. One particularly busy week, I came home from a long day at work to find the apartment in complete disarray. Dishes overflowing, trash not taken out, and a layer of dust covering the surfaces. So I confronted Kelly, telling her firmly, "I'm tired of cleaning up after you. This isn't just a one-time thing, it's every day now." Kelly argued that she was overwhelmed by her new job and that the mess was only temporary until she got back on track. She said, "I'm doing my best, but you know how hectic things can be. It's just a phase." I told her that phases shouldn't last for weeks and that our living environment was suffering. I reminded her that we had a written agreement and that mutual respect was key to sharing a space. The argument escalated quickly. Kelly accused me of being controlling and overly demanding, while I insisted that she was being inconsiderate of our shared responsibilities. Our conversation turned into a shouting match, and by the end of it, she stormed out of the apartment. That night I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I had never imagined that such a fundamental issue would come between us. Over the following days, the tension in the apartment was palpable. Kelly left little notes around, apologizing for being messy and promising to sort it out soon. But nothing changed. I continued to clean up after both of us, and the stress of living in a cluttered, disorganized space began affecting my work and mental health. I started to wonder if I was being unreasonable for expecting a certain level of cleanliness from someone I share my home with. At a house meeting, I finally laid out all my grievances and demanded that Kelly adhere to the cleaning schedule or face consequences, such as revisiting our lease or splitting the cleaning costs. She accused me of turning a minor issue into a big problem, insisting that her mess was just temporary and that I was overreacting. Some mutual friends who heard about the conflict said that I should be more flexible, arguing that everyone has off days and that I needed to give her a break. So aita for making my roommate clean up after her mess, even though she claimed it was only temporary, knowing that my repeated requests for a tidy environment are reasonable given our shared living situation. I love my home and believe that a clean space isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for a peaceful mind. I just wish Kelly would understand that living together means respecting each other's boundaries and responsibilities. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my colleague to my birthday party? Because of office drama, I, 31F, have always tried to keep my personal and professional lives separate. I work in a fast-paced corporate environment where office politics can run rampant, and I've learned that sometimes it's best to leave drama at the door. However, when it came time to plan my milestone 31st birthday party, I found myself in the middle of an unexpected dilemma that forced me to choose between friendship and professionalism. For context, one of my colleagues, Jenna, 29F, has been part of our team for a few years. Initially, she was a reliable co-worker, but over time she started engaging in office gossip, often pitting co-workers against each other for her own benefit. I tried to ignore her antics, focusing solely on my work and my close-knit circle of friends outside the office. When I decided to host a large birthday celebration at a local venue, I made a guest list that included family, longtime friends, and a few co-workers who I genuinely liked. Jenna, despite being a co-worker, wasn't on my list. I felt her presence might stir up unnecessary drama, especially since a few heated exchanges had already occurred in the past months. As the invitations went out, I received a message from Jenna asking why she wasn't invited. She wrote, "I thought we were friends. Why would you exclude me from your special day?" I hesitated before replying, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Jenna, I really value our professional relationship, but I'm keeping this celebration limited to people I know well outside the office. I hope you understand." She was visibly hurt by my response, and the situation quickly escalated. Soon our mutual colleagues started gossiping about my decision. Some accused me of being snobbish and exclusionary, while others agreed that inviting Jenna might have turned my celebration into a battleground for office politics. My manager even called me aside, warning that the situation could reflect poorly on the team if it spilled into the workplace. The fallout wasn't limited to the office. Jenna's social media posts painted me as the villain, a cold-hearted person who valued office alliances over genuine friendship. Friends I hadn't seen in years started asking me about the drama, and I found myself having to explain my rationale repeatedly. The more I explained, the more it seemed that people took sides, with some insisting I should have given her a chance. I understand that my decision may seem harsh to some, but I had spent countless hours navigating the treacherous waters of office politics. I wasn't about to risk my personal celebration by inviting someone whose actions had already created so much tension. I wanted a stress-free night with people I trusted, people who'd been there for me long before I ever stepped into the corporate world. Now I'm stuck in a situation where I'm being called both mature and petty. Some co-workers admire my ability to separate my personal life from the office, while others feel I should have taken a chance on Jenna and tried to mend fences. Meanwhile, Jenna's persistent messages and social media posts continue to add fuel to the fire, making it hard for me to enjoy what should have been a joyous occasion. So, aita for not inviting my colleague to my birthday party because of the office drama she's been involved in. Even if it means some people think I'm excluding her unfairly, I'm torn between wanting to keep my life drama-free and the fear that I might be judged for not giving someone an opportunity to change. In the end, I just hope that people understand that sometimes protecting your peace is more important than trying to please everyone, even if that means making difficult choices about who gets to share your special moments. Am I the a-hole for not attending my best friend's wedding after she publicly humiliated me? I, 26F, have been best friends with Michelle, 27F, since college, and we've shared countless memories, from late-night study sessions to wild adventures abroad. We even promised each other that we'd stand by one another through life's biggest moments. That's why I was devastated when Michelle's wedding day turned into a scene of public humiliation that I could neither ignore nor forget. I was honored when Michelle asked me to be part of her inner circle as a bridesmaid. For months, I helped plan the wedding, from brainstorming themes to selecting floral arrangements. However, as the big day approached, small tensions began to surface. Michelle started making offhand comments that hinted at dissatisfaction with how I contributed, and I chalked it up to wedding stress. I wanted nothing more than to support her, even if I felt a bit underappreciated. On the day of the wedding, everything was picture perfect, until the reception began. During dinner, Michelle took the stage to thank her family and friends. I sat there beaming with pride until she began recounting stories from our past. At first it was sweet nostalgia, but soon her anecdotes turned bitter. One particular story, a moment where I had been too honest with her about a personal secret, was recounted in front of everyone. The tone was mocking, and I could feel the eyes of the guests boring into me. I tried to laugh it off at first, but as the humiliation piled on, I realized that this was more than an innocent slip of the tongue. Michelle continued, "I remember when my supposed best friend couldn't keep a secret and embarrassed me in front of everyone. But hey, we all have our quirks, right?" The room fell silent for a moment, and I felt every eye on me. I wanted to disappear. I left the reception abruptly, unable to face the people who once meant the world to me. I later found out that my departure was the talk of the wedding. Some guests even whispered that I had overreacted. Michelle called me afterward, her voice a mix of hurt and anger. She said, "I can't believe you'd skip the rest of my wedding because of a little joke. You knew how I felt, and I expected you to handle it like an adult." I tried to explain that it wasn't just the joke, it was the public nature of the humiliation, the betrayal of trust, and the realization that our friendship might not have been as reciprocal as I once believed. Instead of apologizing or understanding, Michelle accused me of being overly sensitive and said that I was making a scene. Since that day, our friendship has been on shaky ground. Mutual friends have taken sides, with some saying I should forgive and forget for the sake of old memories, while others agree that a wedding isn't the time to be publicly put down. I'm left questioning whether I'm the one in the wrong for leaving, or if Michelle's behavior was truly unforgivable. So aita for not attending the rest of my best friend's wedding after she publicly humiliated me, even if it meant I might be labeled as dramatic or ungrateful. I'm still trying to process the hurt and betrayal. My love for Michelle is real, but so is my need to protect my self-respect. I wish things had been different, but I can't ignore the pain that night continues to cause me. Am I the a-hole for calling out my parents for their controlling behavior at family gatherings? I, 23F, have always felt like I lived under the microscope of my parents' expectations. Growing up, every family gathering was less a celebration and more an interrogation about my life choices, my education, my friends, my relationships. As I got older, I craved independence, but my parents' controlling behavior only intensified. Recently, during our annual family reunion, I finally reached my breaking point. For as long as I can remember, my parents, both in their early 50s, have prided themselves on being involved in every aspect of my life. They believe that as their daughter, I owe them the right to scrutinize every decision I make. At family gatherings, they would corner me with questions like, "When are you going to settle down?" Or "Why haven't you thought about a real career?" Their constant criticism and unsolicited advice made me feel suffocated and unworthy. At this year's reunion, tensions were higher than ever. Cousins, aunts, uncles, even strangers seemed to have an opinion about how I should be living my life. One incident in particular pushed me over the edge. During dinner, my mom, Lisa, started criticizing my choice to study art instead of something more practical. "Don't you think it's time you chose a career that can actually support you?" she demanded, raising her voice. My dad tried to placate her, but I could see the eyes of my relatives burning holes in me. I had had enough. After dinner, when everyone had dispersed to various corners of the house, I confronted my parents in the living room. "Mom, Dad, I need to say something," I began, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "I'm tired of feeling like I'm on trial every time we get together. You act like I'm incapable of making my own decisions, and that your opinions are the only ones that matter." They tried to interrupt, saying things like, "We only want what's best for you." But I wasn't done. "What's best for me isn't for you to control my every move. I'm not a child anymore. I have dreams, ambitions, and yes, I make mistakes. But I need to live my life without constant judgment." My words, raw and unfiltered, hung in the air. Some relatives glanced over, shocked at the confrontation. My parents were visibly taken aback. My mum's eyes filled with tears, and my dad looked down, speechless. They accused me of being ungrateful and disrespectful, but I stood my ground. I explained that while I appreciated their concern, the way they imposed their expectations on me was damaging my self-esteem and my ability to grow. I told them I needed more space and trust, and that if they couldn't provide that, I'd have to distance myself from family gatherings where I was made to feel worthless. In the aftermath, the atmosphere at the reunion turned icy. My parents, refused to speak to me for the rest of the weekend, and my extended family whispered that I'd lost my respect for them. Now I'm receiving mixed messages from friends and even some relatives. Some say I'm justified in standing up for myself, while others believe I should have respected my parents' authority. So, aita for calling out my parents for their controlling behavior at our family reunion, even though it ended with my mum in tears and my dad silent in disappointment. I'm still reeling from the confrontation, but I also feel a sense of relief. I finally voiced feelings I'd held inside for years. I just worry that I might have burned bridges that could be repaired with time and understanding. However, I can't keep sacrificing my mental well-being to meet expectations that were never mine to begin with. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my ex to stay at my place after our breakup? I, 30F, recently ended a long-term relationship with my ex, Jordan, 32M, after 5 years together. The breakup was messy, filled with hurt feelings, accusations, and unmet expectations. Before the split, Jordan and I had shared a home that we both considered ours. However, shortly after our separation, Jordan asked if he could temporarily stay at my place while he sorted out his living situation. Given our long history, I felt conflicted. On one hand, I sympathized with his sudden need for shelter. On the other hand, having him under my roof could complicate the emotional recovery process I desperately needed. I had started the difficult journey of reclaiming my independence and establishing new boundaries, and I wasn't sure that having him around wouldn't set me back. When he first made the request, I said, "Jordan, I understand you're in a tough spot, but I think it's best if we both have some space, right? Now, it would be healthier for both of us." He pleaded, arguing that he had nowhere else to go, and that this was just for a couple of weeks. I tried to reassure him that I cared about his well-being, but I was firm in my decision. I even offered to help him find a short-term rental or a friend's place to stay. Jordan was understandably upset. He accused me of being cold-hearted and said that after all we'd been through, I was abandoning him when he needed me most. His family called me, urging me to reconsider, and even some of our mutual friends said that I should at least let him stay for a little while. Yet every time I tried to explain my need for space and healing, the conversation turned into an argument about loyalty and commitment. A few days later, Jordan showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying a duffel bag and tears in his eyes. "I don't know what else to do," he said, voice trembling. I had to gently push him to the door, reiterating that I couldn't provide a place for him to stay. The encounter was painful, filled with raw emotions and unspoken words from our shared past. After he left, I felt a mix of guilt, sadness, and relief. I knew it was the right decision for me, but it hurt to see him in distress. The situation escalated when I discovered that mutual friends were taking sides. Some argued that I was heartless for not offering him shelter, while others believed that my boundaries were completely reasonable. I received messages calling me selfish and insensitive, and even my family questioned whether I was overreacting. I began to wonder if I should have been more accommodating, given our shared history. I spent many sleepless nights reflecting on the decision. I reminded myself that our breakup was a necessary step for both of us to move on. By refusing his request, I wasn't punishing him. I was simply protecting my emotional space. I realized that if we were to have any chance at a future friendship, both of us needed time to heal individually. So, aita for not allowing my ex to stay at my place after our breakup, even though it left him feeling abandoned and led to a lot of backlash from mutual friends and family. I stand by my decision, knowing that sometimes the kindest act is to let go. I truly hope that Jordan finds the support he needs elsewhere, and that someday, when the wounds have healed, we might both look back on this as a necessary step in our journeys. Am I the a-hole for standing up to my neighbor who keeps letting their dog ruin my garden? 35F. Live in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone generally gets along. I take immense pride in my garden, a small sanctuary I've cultivated over years of hard work. My flowers are meticulously arranged, and I even have a few rare species that I nurture with extra care. However, things took a sour turn when my next-door neighbor, Mark, 38M, and his unruly dog, Duke, started causing havoc. At first, it was just a few paw prints here and there. which I dismissed as the occasional accident. But soon, Duke began, tramping through my flower beds, digging up my carefully planted bulbs, and even urinating on my prized rose bushes. I politely mentioned it to Mark in passing, hoping he'd train Duke, or at least be more cautious. His response was, "Oh, I'm sorry, Duke's just a dog, he doesn't know any better." Over the next couple of months, the damage escalated. My once pristine garden began to look ravaged, soil scattered everywhere, trampled blooms, and a lingering odor that no amount of cleaning could eliminate. I felt like my sanctuary was being desecrated. I left a written note on Mark's door asking if he could please keep Duke under control when near my property. I even suggested that he consider a leash during walks, but I got no response. One morning, after discovering that a significant portion of my flower beds had been uprooted, I confronted Mark directly. "Mark, I've asked nicely before, but your dog is destroying my garden. I spend countless hours here, and it's my pride and joy. I need you to do something about it." Mark shrugged and said, "I told you she's just a dog. It's not my fault if he gets excited." His indifference infuriated me, and I left feeling helpless and angry. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed a small fence around my garden, something both functional and aesthetically pleasing. I hoped that a physical barrier would finally keep Duke away. For a few days, it worked perfectly. I even posted on the neighborhood forum, politely explaining my situation and asking for understanding if anyone noticed Duke pacing near my fence. Unfortunately, Mark wasn't deterred. One afternoon, I caught him in the act of casually letting Duke off leash near my garden. I stormed over and shouted, "Mark, what is wrong with you? You promised to keep your dog under control." He merely laughed, saying, "It's just a dog, relax." My frustration boiled over, and I ended up giving him a piece of my mind about respect for other people's property and the effort I put into my garden. The exchange was heated. Neighbors began gathering, and before I knew it, Mark's wife had to intervene to calm him down. The incident quickly became the talk of the block. Some neighbors supported my right to protect my property, while others thought I overreacted and should have been more patient. Mark's family even reached out to me later, saying I had made a mountain out of a molehill and that dogs will be dogs. I argued that it wasn't about the dog being a dog, it was about my boundaries being trampled time and again. Since that confrontation, I've noticed a shift. Duke now seems to keep his distance from my garden, and Mark has started walking him on a leash when near my property. But the incident has left a lasting rift between us. I receive hostile looks when I see Mark in the neighborhood, and I worry that the peace in our community might be shattered permanently. So, aita for standing up to my neighbor and yelling at him for letting his dog ruin my garden, even though some say I made a scene over something trivial. I'm torn because while I understand that dogs can be unpredictable, my garden is a labor of love. I just want to enjoy the fruits of my labor, without constant worry that someone else's negligence will ruin it. I feel that setting firm boundaries is necessary, but at what cost to community harmony? Am I the a-hole for refusing to lend money to my cousin despite family pressure? I, 33M, have always been the responsible one in my extended family. I've worked hard to build a stable life, save money, and plan for the future. So when my cousin, Derek, 31Ms, approached me asking for a loan of $5,000 to cover unexpected medical bills, I was immediately torn between familial duty and my own financial security. For context, Derek has a history of living paycheck to paycheck and has asked for help several times before, often without any clear plan for repayment. I've lent him money in the past, only for him to promise that he'd pay me back soon, which rarely happened. Despite my hesitations, this time I set strict conditions. I'd lend him the money only if he signed a written agreement outlining a clear repayment plan over 6 months. I even consulted a lawyer to ensure everything was formalized, hoping that this time would be different. When I explained my conditions, Derek became visibly upset. "I can't believe you're treating me like a bank," he said, his voice rising. He insisted that families should help each other out, no questions asked, and accused me of being heartless. My aunt and uncle, who were present during the conversation, started chiming in that I should just help him out because we're family. Their disapproval weighed heavily on me, but I held my ground, insisting that I needed to protect my own financial stability as well as our family dynamic. Despite the conditions being clear and fair, Derek refused to sign the agreement. He stormed out, leaving me feeling guilty and confused. The news of my refusal spread quickly among our relatives. Soon I was bombarded with calls and texts from family members, each one accusing me of being selfish and unsupportive. Some said that I should have trusted him as a family member, while others warned that my actions might create a rift that would affect future generations. I began to wonder if I had made the right decision. I tried to explain that it wasn't about lacking compassion, it was about ensuring that both of us were treated fairly. I've worked hard to build a secure future, and I can't risk jeopardizing that by being taken advantage of. Yet, the constant barrage of guilt and judgment from relatives made me question if I was overreacting. In the weeks following the incident, Derek's behavior changed. He became distant, and I heard through the grapevine that he was struggling even more without the financial help. Family gatherings became tense, with relatives making snide remarks about my lack of family spirit. Even some of my closest family members started asking me to reconsider my stance and lend him the money, arguing that I was cold and unfeeling. So aita for refusing to lend money to my cousin, despite the immense pressure from my family, even though I set clear conditions in hopes of protecting both his interests and my own. I truly wish there had been a compromise, a way to help him, without feeling exploited. But every time I look back on our past interactions, I'm reminded that lending money without safeguards only leads to heartache and resentment. I stand by my decision, even though it has come at the cost of family harmony. Am I the a-hole for quitting my job? Because my boss wouldn't respect my work-life balance, 34M, have spent the last decade climbing the corporate ladder at a prominent marketing firm. I was proud of my work ethic and dedication, so much so that I'd often put in long hours, sacrificing personal time for the sake of the company. However, over the past couple of years, I began to feel the burnout creeping in. My boss, Alan, 45M, seemed to believe that true commitment meant being available 24/7, and he often expected me to answer emails late at night or on weekends. For a long time, I tried to balance the demands of the job with my personal life, sacrificing time with my family and friends. I justified it as temporary until I could secure a promotion, but eventually I realized that my mental and physical health was paying the price. I wasn't sleeping well, my relationships were strained, and I started questioning whether the work was truly worth it. After a particularly stressful month, I mustered the courage to approach Alan about setting some boundaries. I said, "Alan, I value my work here, but I also need time for my personal life. I'd like to establish some limits on after-hours communications so I can recharge." I expected a reasonable conversation, but instead he responded, "You're paid to be available. If you can't handle that, maybe this isn't the right place for you." His dismissive tone and refusal to negotiate pushed me over the edge. I decided that I deserved better, respect for my time and well-being. I submitted my resignation, explaining that I was leaving to pursue opportunities that respected a healthy work-life balance. The decision wasn't made lightly. I knew it would impact my colleagues, some of whom also struggled with similar issues, but I couldn't continue sacrificing my health for a job that didn't value me as a person. The fallout was immediate. My colleagues whispered behind my back, some calling me ungrateful, while others congratulated me on finally standing up for myself. Alan sent a terse farewell email stating, "Good luck finding another job that requires you to work as hard as we do here." I felt a mix of relief and sadness, relief that I was finally free from the toxic environment, and sadness over the loss of years invested in something that wasn't fulfilling. In the weeks since my resignation, I've been bombarded by messages from former co-workers. Some say I was foolish for leaving such a secure job, while others say I'm an inspiration for prioritizing my mental health. Even my family is divided. My partner is proud of my decision, but my parents worry about the financial instability it might bring. So, aita for quitting my job because my boss wouldn't respect my work-life balance, even though some people say I should have been more patient and worked through the tough times. I believe that life is too short to be chained to a desk, sacrificing what truly matters. I'm still searching for a new opportunity, one that values both hard work and personal well-being. I just hope that in doing so, I can inspire others to stand up for themselves before it's too late. Am I the a-hole for cutting ties with my friend after she borrowed money and never repaid me? I, 28F, have had a close friend, Melissa, 27F, since high school. We were inseparable, sharing secrets, supporting each other through tough times, and celebrating our milestones together. Over the years, our friendship grew stronger, and I always assumed that if one of us ever needed help, the other would be there without hesitation. Unfortunately, that assumption was shattered last year. A little over a year ago, Melissa found herself in a financial bind after losing her job unexpectedly. Knowing that I had managed to save up a decent emergency fund, she hesitantly asked if I could lend her $3,000 to cover rent and bills until she could get back on her feet. I was taken aback, but because I trusted her and believed in our bond, I agreed. I made it clear, however, that this was a loan, and I expected her to repay me as soon as she was able. We even discussed a rough timeline. Once she secured a new job, I expected to be paid back within 3 months. At first, everything seemed fine. Melissa reassured me she was actively job hunting, and I was willing to give her some grace. But as months passed, I received vague updates that never included any concrete repayment plan. I started to feel uneasy as the promise of repayment faded into empty assurances. I reached out several times, gently reminding her of the agreement, but each time I was met with promises that everything would be fine soon. After 6 months of silence on the repayment front, I had to confront the reality that the money might never come back. I began to feel resentful. My trust had been exploited, and I was left financially and emotionally vulnerable. I had always been there for Melissa, but now it felt like my generosity had been taken for granted. One day, I mustered the courage to have a frank conversation. Melissa, I need to talk to you about the money I lent you. I understand things are hard, but we agreed it would be repaid when you got back on your feet, and it's been far too long now. She got defensive immediately, saying things like, "You knew I was in trouble when you lent me the money, and it's not just about the money, it's about our friendship." I tried to explain that the money was important to me too, and that while I cared about her, I also needed to feel respected and valued. Her reaction only worsened over the next few weeks. Instead of making an effort to repay me, or at least set up a concrete repayment plan, she started canceling our plans, avoiding eye contact, and even posting cryptic messages on social media about how ungrateful I was being. I reached my breaking point when she accused me of using money as a weapon against our friendship. I couldn't believe that after all we'd been through, she would twist the situation to make herself appear as the victim. Feeling betrayed, I decided that I needed some space, not just from the money issue, but from her altogether. I began to distance myself, no longer answering her calls, not replying to her texts, and eventually I unfollowed her on social media. I know this might seem extreme, but I couldn't continue feeling disrespected and taken advantage of. Since then, a mutual circle of friends has started taking sides. Some say I should have been more understanding, given her circumstances, while others agree that my trust was broken and I'm justified in distancing myself. My family members who knew about the situation are also split, some urging me to be forgiving and others validating my decision to protect myself. So, AETA for cutting ties with Melissa after she borrowed money and never repaid me, especially when she now claims I'm ruining our friendship over something trivial. I'm left questioning whether true friendship should come with unconditional forgiveness, or if there should be accountability when someone repeatedly disrespects the trust you've placed in them. I still feel hurt and disappointed. My generosity was met with ingratitude, and I'm struggling to understand how someone I once trusted so deeply could let it come to this. Am I the a-hole for refusing to host my in-laws during a busy work week? 32 am. Have always prided myself on being a responsible professional. I work long hours at a demanding tech company and recently was promoted to a managerial role. My home is my sanctuary, a place where I unwind after stressful days. When my wife, Nina, 30F, suggested that my parents come to visit during my busiest work week, I knew something was off. For context, my parents, both in their late 60s, are retired and love to travel. They often stay with us for a few days at a time, enjoying the comforts of our spacious apartment. While I've always been accommodating about family visits, I also value my downtime, especially when work pressures are mounting. When Nina told me that my parents plan to visit for an entire week, coinciding exactly with a critical product launch, I immediately hesitated. I tried explaining to her that the timing was incredibly inconvenient. "Nina, this launch is the most important one of the year. I can't have distractions at home right now," I said, hoping she'd understand. Nina, however, was adamant. "They're your parents, and they deserve to see you. Besides, I can handle things here. It'll be fun for all of us." I argued that I'd already been working around the clock and needed to focus, but she brushed off my concerns. Over the next few days, I made several attempts to contact my parents to gently suggest rescheduling their visit. Instead, I was met with excitement on their end. They'd been looking forward to spending time with me and meeting my new team. Unaware of the conflict, the week arrived, and my in-laws showed up unannounced early in the morning on the day of the product launch. The moment they walked in, it felt like my meticulously planned schedule was thrown into chaos. My mother-in-law, Barbara, started asking questions about my workload, offering to help with office tasks, which I politely declined, and my dad kept suggesting that I take a little break, son. I tried to maintain my composure, but I felt increasingly trapped between familial obligations and my professional responsibilities. During a tense lunch break in the office, I received a big flurry of messages from my boss about deadlines and an urgent meeting that required my full attention. I rushed out to the parking lot, only to be confronted by Barbara, who insisted on discussing my well-being and how much I needed to relax. In that moment, I snapped. I told her firmly, "I'm not ignoring my responsibilities because of a personal visit. I have a job to do and I can't afford distractions right now." Her eyes welled up and I could see that my words hurt her deeply. Later that evening, Nina's phone lit up with texts from her mum, complaining about how ungrateful and cold-hearted I was being. Nina later confronted me, saying I had no right to prioritize work over family. "This isn't about the product launch. It's about you not being a good son," she accused. I tried to explain that I've always loved and respected my parents, but the timing was absolutely critical. I argued that if they had planned their visit for a less hectic week, I could have given them my full attention. Nina's disappointment was palpable, and soon enough my parents called to say they were leaving early, claiming they didn't want to be a burden. Now family dinners are tense, and Nina's been giving me the silent treatment. My co-workers have heard whispers about how I chose work over family, and I'm starting to question whether my professional ambitions are worth sacrificing personal relationships. I'm torn between understanding my own need to focus at work and the guilt of letting my family down. So, aita for refusing to host my in-laws during a busy work week, even though it led to hurt feelings and disrupted family plans. I never intended to hurt my parents or upset Nina, but I also can't compromise on my career commitments during such a pivotal time. I feel caught in an impossible situation, torn between the love for my family and the demands of my professional life. I just wish there had been a compromise, a way to honor both sides without causing this much heartache. So am I the a-hole for telling my sister? Her new boyfriend is a red flag. I, isu 29TF, have always been the protective older sister to my younger sibling, Kara, 25F. Growing up, I watched her go through heartbreak after heartbreak, and I swore I'd always have her back. So when she introduced her new boyfriend, Ryan, to the family at a recent holiday dinner, I couldn't help but notice little red flags that everyone else seemed to overlook. Ryan was charming, smiling a little too widely, laughing at all of Kara's jokes and complimenting her excessively. At first, I assumed he was just trying to impress her family, but over the next few weeks, I began to notice odd patterns. For instance, every time Kara tried to mention plans with her friends or talk about her career goals, Ryan would interrupt with a dismissive comment. When I invited him to a small family dinner, He arrived late and had a half-hearted apology, then spent most of the night on his phone. One evening, I decided to call Kara and ask how things were going. Instead of the usual happy update, she hesitated and said, "Everything's fine, Ryan just has his own way of doing things." I pressed gently. "Like what? You know you can tell me if something's off." She admitted that Ryan had once suggested she cancel plans with friends to spend the night with him, and that he started to question who she talks to, especially if it's men from work. My heart sank. I felt that this behavior wasn't just overprotective, it was controlling. I knew I had to say something, but I also knew that Kara was fiercely independent. So the next time we met for coffee, I carefully broached the subject. "Kara, I know you really like Ryan, but have you ever thought that some of his behavior might be concerning?" I tried to be as gentle as possible. "For example, when he told you to skip dinner with your friends because he felt insecure about you talking to someone else, that didn't seem right." Kara's face clouded over. "I know you mean well, but he says it's just because he cares about me." She replied defensively. I pressed on, recounting a few more examples from recent outings, like the time he criticized the way she dressed, claiming that her clothes were too revealing, even though she had worn them many times before. I explained that it wasn't healthy for a partner to dictate what you wear or who you see. At this point, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, but I love him. You're just always so negative about everyone I like," she said, hurt. I tried to clarify that my concerns came from love and the desire to see her treated well. "Kara, I'm not trying to be the enemy. I just see these actions as controlling and, frankly, a red flag for emotional abuse." The conversation ended abruptly, and in the weeks that followed, our communication became strained. At a family gathering a few days later, I overheard Kara telling a friend, "My sister doesn't understand love. I know what I want, and I'm not going to let anyone tell me otherwise, even if it's someone who says they care. Now my parents and even some mutual friends are saying I overstepped my boundaries. They claim that it's Kara's life, and she can make her own choices, and that I'm projecting my own past experiences onto Ryan. Meanwhile, I feel torn because I've seen the subtle ways he undermines her confidence and independence, yet I also know I cannot force her to see it. I've tried reaching out to her again, suggesting counseling or even just more open dialogue, but she shuts down any discussion about Ryan. My guilt is mounting. Am I being overly critical, or am I genuinely protecting her from potential harm? Every time I see her smile when she's with him, I worry she's blinded by love. So aita for telling my sister that her new boyfriend is a red flag? I'm left wondering if my concerns are justified, or if I'm just bitter because I wasn't chosen for the perfect relationship. I love Kara and want nothing but the best for her, but sometimes it feels like my warnings are falling on deaf ears. I'm caught between the need to be supportive and the urge to speak out against what I see as dangerous behavior. I realize now that perhaps the hardest part is accepting that, as an adult, Kara might not heed the advice of someone, even her big sister, who only wants to protect her from potential heartache. But what if my intuition is right? What if I'm the only one who can see the storm brewing in Ryan's smile?